Hey guys, it's Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of our Training Around Pain series. And today we're talking about ankles. So just quick disclaimer, I like to kind of just kick things off with, I'm not a medical professional. I am a strength coach, a power lifter, and this is just kind of over the 13 years to some of experience that I have that I'm going to share. This is purely anecdote. If you are dealing with like actual pain, and some like serious issues, we recommend check out clinicalathlete.com, get an assessment, check out a provider in your area. So I actually kind of went back and forth if this was even a video that was appropriate, because there's going to be a lot of transfer over to from the other joints that we talked about. And I think the ankle, especially, this is not so much in the powerlifting world, I guess maybe a little bit, but I would say that it's definitely in the sports performance world. I think the ankles, I don't want to say they get too much attention, but I think some of the ankle mobility gets like a little bit overused and overrated. And at least in our experience, when it comes to squatting, unless someone's an Olympic lifter and they need to squat, ATG and like all the way down where their butt's touching their heels. For someone to squat parallel or slightly below parallel, I don't think you need as much dorsiflexion as we think. In my experience in 13, I haven't really seen too many people with ankle mobility problems. And for those that really do have it, usually that kind of cleans up even just with like a pair of weightlifting shoes and just practicing the squat over time. So I just wanted to kind of kick things off because I think a lot of people think they have ankle mobility restrictions, but usually it's a kind of a hip mobility problem or just a stability problem. And sometimes we just need to have a stable foot. So I know Chris Duffin talks about this a lot. If you have like a lot of ankle mobility, but you don't have a stable foot, it doesn't really matter. So like actually rooting and your foot mechanics and this is something I could work on a little bit better. I wish, our other coach, Benny, he actually does a really good job of his foot mechanics and spreading his toes. Even though he's like a bench specialist, he's actually a really good squatter. And I think this is one of the reasons why, so he has really good foot mechanics. So some of that stuff, you can see I'm barefoot today. It's not by accident. I want you guys to see. I'm not the best example of this, but I'm going to try to at least explain to you what we're looking for in this case. So the first thing I think that's important is that you obviously want to assess do you actually have an ankle mobility problem? So if you can kind of get your knee to over your midfoot, I think that's plenty. If you can get your knee past your midfoot, that's fine. So there's a couple different ways you could do this. You can do this from like a half kneeling position or standing position. You could kind of put something in front of your toes here or like a wall. So I mean, for like a deep, that's probably like to get into a parallel squat, that's probably like all I really need. Now, if I wanted to get like an ultra deep squat, I'm going to need to go a little bit further. I know like some other people now, so if I'm a weightlifter, I might want to be able to do it a couple of inches in front. So, that's pretty good dorsiflexion. If you have about 70 degrees, that's probably enough. We don't need to get the goniometer out or anything like that, but you could see and I would say I'm a pretty I'm moved pretty good, but I'm not like squat depth king or anything like that, especially if you see me compete. But so I want to make sure that this heel stays in contact with the ground. So this would be like a failed test if my heel came up. I want my big toe, little toe, and heel in contact with the ground. That's called tripod foot. That's going to be really important for all our kind of foot mechanics, okay? So obviously I can kind of do, now if I want to work on ankle range, let's say I didn't pass the test, or even if I couldn't even, get my knee to where my foot is, just doing this position, and you can go against the wall and do it, and just kind of work your way, as far away from the wall as you can. What I don't want to do is I don't want to come in or out. I just want to come straight on and keep my big toe, little toe, and heel in contact with the floor. So just number one, assess your ankle range of motion. That's going to be really important. Sethi Cohen actually has a really great video on kind of assessing if it's a hip or an ankle problem. You could also just test your squat and see if you have kind of a really bad butt wink if you go all the way down. And if you test your squat again with your heels elevated, and if the butt wink kind of gets eliminated, usually she would recommend that's usually an ankle problem and not a hip problem. If you fail both, then usually that's a hip issue or like a core issue. So I think that's a pretty good like kind of protocol. So again, like if I squatted with just my body weight and I had a really bad butt wink in the bottom, I was able to elevate my heels and the butt wink goes away, then that usually means it would be like an ankle. So I'll just kind of demo, like, so if I was here and I butt winked and then I elevated my heels to something like this, for example, and my butt wink, you know, this is obviously like a high position, but just so you can see. So like if my butt wink, if my mechanics improved, then usually that would tell me, and if nothing else, it might tell me that maybe I'd benefit to squatting with a heeled shoe. So that's something to consider as well. So see if the heel elevation actually helps the lifter keep better mechanics or not. But I would check your ankle range of motion first. Now, so now we actually want to look at the mechanics of the foot. So I want to kind of talk about this. So one of the things that's really important to note is that in our society now we wear shoes. I would say this is even more prevalent with women, but could be men too, whatever your preference is. If you're wearing like high heels and things like that where your feet are really constricted, that's going to mess up your foot and your foot mechanics ultimately. So our feet really should be able to move like our hands. I know for me, like I don't. I actually purposely try to, there's two reasons I do this, but this is one of the reasons. Part of it is that my lower back is usually sore from powerlifting, but I usually wear a lot of slides and stuff because I do like to keep my feet a little bit more free. I do like to walk around my house barefoot, so I can get a little bit work on my fingers and stuff. There's a lot of sprint coaches that kind of swear like by actually even doing, you know, toe exercises and stuff, and I think that can get a little crazy, but I do think there's some merit to it. So I don't do the best job of this, but you would ultimately want to splay your toes, and they shouldn't be like really scrunched up in the shoe. You want to be able to kind of open up here. So I'm actually going to do an exercise I learned from Christoph. I'm going to do some foot love, and hopefully this will improve. So we actually want to address the soft tissue of the actual feet. So we literally want to get in between our toes. And admittedly, I have not done this in a while, so I'm actually a little scared because this can get a little uncomfortable. Okay. But I just want to kind of work in here, and I can work on dorsiflexion. And I have not done this in a while. I probably should do it a little bit more. So I'm kind of working the soft tissue in between my toes. And I'm going to work on dorsiflexing and moving my ankle around as well. And I'm trying to put pressure. So I do recommend you kind of, you know, obviously wash your hands and your feet and stuff before this, but so hopefully there'll be an improvement. And I'm going to kind of try to get in between there so I can spread my toes a little bit better. So if you have trouble with your feet kind of spreading, then this would be a good drill for you. I'm sure you probably see a lot of people like Dr. Deadlift, Kaylor Woolham, others that will train barefoot, and they do a really good job of spreading their feet and creating tension. Okay. All right, so that's real time. So let's see if I can. So I could actually see a little bit of improvement already. So I'm kind of spreading here, and I could actually start to actively twist my foot in the ground. And now I have a good stable tripod foot. So my big toe, little toe, and heel. So again, I'm not perfect. There's better examples of this. But that's kind of the idea, is that we want to spread and then we're going to twist our feet on the floor. Definitely check out our video on hips, because we go over a lot of single leg rooting drills and stuff as well. That will all kind of also help with the ankle and the foot stability. So if I have a more stable foot, if I can do all my hinge patterns more effectively and all my single leg work off that one leg, that's also going to be very beneficial for the ankle as well. So one of the things that we always talk about, we talked about just our normal dorsiflexion mobility. We want to look at above and below the joints. So addressing the soft tissue of the foot itself can be very effective. So I like to use a golf ball. So there's a couple of things. The reasons why I like to use the golf ball is, number one, as a facility. I'd rather like differentiate which balls and which soft tissue tools we use for the feet versus the rest of the body, just for cleanliness things, and the golf ball just works a little bit better. It's a little bit more focal. So I can address the soft tissue of the feet. A lot of times we hold a lot of tension here. And I can do this on both sides. So if someone kind of has tight calves or kind of tight ankles, or they just have poor foot mechanics where their ankles are kind of collapsing in. So you'll see that a lot sometimes, that people's ankles will kind of collapse in like this, and then it'll cause a valgus position. But if we kind of correct the foot mechanics, by correcting the foot mechanics and the hip mechanics, a lot of times it cleans up what happens at the knee. So we do work the foot. We could also work the calf with a lacrosse ball or a foam roller. So you can do one at a time or both at a time. Here. And I like to tack and stretch, so I'm going to dorsiflex here. And I could roll. I could do one at a time or both, so this is kind of like a hot spot for me. So I'm going to work on dorsiflexing and plantar flexing. So I'm working on the tissue itself. You could also if you have a partner, you could also body tempering. I think the calves is really good pre-squat, or if you're a conventional deadlifter that has trouble with the bottom position. So if you don't have like a partner to work on your calves, you could also use something like a stick. It can be very effective as well. But I like, if I could pin and stretch something like a crossbow or a foam roller, I like it a little bit better, so I can actively kind of get that dorsiflexion. The other drill I really like for the ankles is something I call ankle rocking, and we'll actually get in like a lunge position, and we'll get into kind of like the Spider-Man stretch, and I could hold my foot down, and I could work on, so now this is also stretching my groin, and it's going to be a little bit more squat specific. So I can work on driving my knee forward, keeping my big toe, little toe, and heel in contact with the ground. I could obviously add like a voodoo floss or something, or a band if I want, but I find that just body weight works just fine. We don't need to, so I could, if I want to hold my foot down here or here, just to make sure my heel stays in contact with the ground. I don't want to be twisting up my hips too much. I like to use the Q hips are like headlights facing forward, so I don't want to be twisting too much one way or the other. I can also just put pressure here and just work the ankle that way. So that's going to be a really good way to prep the ankles. And the last thing would just practice more like deep squatting, whether it's heels elevated or not. So one thing that could be really useful when we're trying to deep squat, something like a belt squat or like a TRX, or just like holding a pole. So just to kind of allow the ankles to kind of really drive forward. And so I could really get in a deep squat position. So I could really kind of force my knees forward. And I'm just really trying to warm my ankles here. So obviously my torso would not be able to be that upright in a true squat, but the TRX handles will allow me to do so. So I'm getting all that range of motion into my ankles here. So this is something I learned from Steve Maxwell. So I don't know if anyone would want to like do a pistol or whatever, but if I wanted to work on this would be I think called a Chinese squat, so I could really go super close and just really work on my ankles and knees here. That's probably going to be extreme for a lot of people, but the main thing is we're driving the knees forward and not really trying to work the hip, and just trying to work the ankles and allow the knees to drive forward. So that's going to be really important if you really want to use high bar squatting or front squatting as like a supplemental exercise, or if you're a weightlifter, which I don't think a lot of weightlifters will be watching this, but it's worth kind of mentioning. So check your ankle range of motion to see if you actually need to do a lot of this stuff. Check the soft tissue of the feet and the calves. So you're going to check above and below the joint if you need some relief, and just do some dorsiflexion drills. And that's going to, either way, it's going to help your squatting. And yes, this is a good way to see if you need heels or not. Even if you have a lot of dorsiflexion, you still may prefer to squat in heels, and that's totally fine. But that's kind of all encompassing the ankle. And in general, if the feet are stronger, the feet are more stable, and the ankles are good, everything up the chain will be better as well. So everything starts with the feet. That's your connection to the floor, so make sure you definitely don't discount that. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Please subscribe. If you want to support the program, check out the links below. Until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon.